I wasn't thinking about leaving my job. I was just curious. And I stumbled upon, this personal development, entrepreneurship, all these things. And it was like a whole new world opened up for me.
Welcome to the Redefining Midlife podcast. I'm Jo Clark and I'm so glad you're here. And this is a podcast for women who are ready to break free from outdated stereotypes, rediscover themselves, and embrace the endless opportunities that midlife brings. Each week, I'll share expert advice, actionable strategies, and inspiring conversations with incredible women who are redefining what it means to thrive in midlife and beyond. From health and wellness to reigniting your purpose and passions, this is your go-to podcast for feeling empowered, supported, and seen. And midlife isn't the end. It's your time to shine, rewrite your story, and create a life that you truly love. So let's get started. Welcome to episode 128 of the Redefining Midlife podcast. Now, midlife, as we know, can sometimes feel overwhelming, even isolating, like we're the only ones who's actually navigating some of these big life changes. But the truth is, every single one of us has been through major transitions. And when we share our stories, something powerful happens. We realize we're not alone. And I also love to highlight that these big life events often lead us into new, unexpected, and different directions. And adversity, as challenging as it can also be a great teacher. At the start of the year, I asked my Instagram community if anyone would like to share their midlife stories on the podcast. And today's guest, Christine Santos, bravely put up her hand and said yes. Women all over the world experience similar midlife transitions. And as you'll hear, Christine, who's joining us from the US, has navigated some of the biggest. She left her long-standing corporate career, became a full-time carer for her mother, adjusted to an empty nest, and stepped into a brand new career that came about almost by accident. Now, Christine is a podcast producer and a host who helps women amplify their voices, share their stories, and expand their reach. And through her podcasting expertise and actionable strategies, she empowers other women to step into their purpose, grow their communities, and make a lasting impact. And she also believes that podcasting is a powerful tool for connection, confidence, and transformation. And I am so with you on that, Christine. And I can't wait for you to hear Christine's journey because it's inspiring, it's relatable, and it's full of insights that might just spark something in you too. So let's dive in. And welcome to the Redefining Midlife podcast, Christine. It is lovely to have you join us all the way from the States.
Hi, Jo. Thank you so much for having me. This is great.
It is great because we have had a few international guests before, but it's always a treat to listen and to talk to somebody who's comes from like a similar type of a culture in many ways, but completely different life to what we're used to here in Australia. So just for context, so the listeners can put some of the pieces of the puzzle together about how you came to be on the podcast. I met you on socials a few months ago because being a small world, and I think you reached out to me. I can't quite remember what came first, the chicken or the egg, or Christine or Joe, that you are a podcast editor and you happen to be editing the podcast of a friend of mine, Colette Brown, who has also been a past guest on the podcast. And I just asked at the beginning of the year if there was anybody in my socials on Instagram in the stories. And I just said, I'm putting together the outline of the show for the year for Redefining Midlife podcast. And I love talking to everyday women because we share so many things in common. And it's a great platform to hear that you're not alone. And I just asked who would be wanting to come on and share their stories. And it's a big, brave step to share your voice. And you were one of the ladies who bravely put up a hand and said, yes, I'll come on. So that's how you've come to be on the show today. So thank you. And thank you for being brave to come on to share your story, because I know it's going to resonate with so many women.
Oh, thank you so much. And yes, I found you, I'm going to say 2 years ago because you were on my client's podcast. So I edited your interview with her. And I've continued to follow you, throughout. And when you put out on social is anybody interested in coming on the show? I immediately raised my hand because I've been so inspired by watching you and your journey, and it's similar yet different, right? And I was just so excited. I'm like, what a wonderful opportunity. So thank you so much for doing this and having me on.
It's an absolute pleasure. And I always love just finding out more about our guests because I am the eternal sticky beak and I love learning and I enjoy people and just finding out more about them. So what I like to do is tell us basically, right from the get-go, where in the States are you? So we can all get in our head geographically where you might be, north, south, east, west. So if you could just share with that to the listeners now.
Yes. So I'm on the East Coast. I'm very close to Boston, Massachusetts. And another maybe big city would be New York City. So I am maybe 3 hours north of New York City, but right on the East Coast, very close to the water, the ocean, which I love. And so we are in the thick. It is here in the States. It's February and very wintry, and it's extremely cold and icy right now.
Isn't it amazing? Because we were talking about the weather before we, as you usually do, discuss the weather because it's another common thing. But also talking about here in Australia, it's summer, so it's hard to imagine what it's like on the other side of the world where you're about to hit an Arctic freeze that's coming your way, a big cold blast, while we're in t-shirt, shorts, going for swims to the beach, just enjoying and thinking, oh my goodness, a bit of relief from the hot weather would be nice. And you're probably thinking, oh my God, a break from the cold weather would be absolutely incredible.
Yeah, exactly. It's so funny and I love it so much. And that's another wonderful aspect of, being online and social media and all the amazing people you meet and the different perspectives and different environments. It's just also good.
It is good. Now, and again, because I'm the inherent sticky beak, I like to find out what people's lives were like before, because really it's the current decisions or our current life is based on all of the decisions that we've made in the years prior. It's always led us up to this particular point. So I'd love to find out more about where you grew up, what life was like for you then, what your dreams were when you were a younger woman, and what did you really think your life was going to look like? Is it anything like is happening right now for you?
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, I love this. So thank you for the question. So I grew up with a single parent, my mother, and we grew up in a very small city, still East Coast, further from Boston than I am now, but in a small but very populated city, meaning very crowded, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I really lived in conditions that were not great, meaning we lived in tenements, which is, I don't know if you use the same language there, but multifamily buildings.
Mhm.
And we had neighbors, and as a child, and I'm not saying my mother was scared, but as a child, I was scared of our neighbors. So it was a very scary type of childhood. I would ride the bus with other kids, and funny because we were maybe in seventh grade at the oldest. That's how old I was. And they would be smoking cigarettes and throwing their cigarette butts at me. And so it was that kind of really city, gritty life. And my mother worked 3 jobs like my whole life growing up. Because she wanted to provide for us. And I always really admired that, looked up to it. I thought, she was really strong and brave. And I have a brother who I love dearly. And so we were home. Oh, he's older. So he was sort of, taking care of me. And so we were home alone a lot and we are very independent. We were in the house. We weren't necessarily out and about, but it was it was definitely a challenging childhood, but I only say that now as an adult and living a totally different lifestyle that it was challenging. I didn't know any different, right? As a child, that's what I knew. And I just feel so, and I know people say this, but it's so true. I'm so grateful for that experience because I think it really built resilience in myself, motivation, inspiration. Like I said, just watching my mom really work hard to make ends meet.
Mm. Yeah. And what were your dreams like, Christine? Did you have a thought that this is what I was going to be doing? Because clearly, if you felt scared, you're probably wanting to leave that area and create a different type of life for yourself. You may have seen, I don't know if this is your story, maybe seeing your mum working so hard, three jobs and trying to manage a family, that's huge. Did you want a different type of a life? What was the sorts of thoughts that were going through your head when you were a younger woman?
Yeah, so when I was a child, I honestly didn't have those thoughts. I honestly, that was our life, and I didn't didn't think or wasn't aware of something different, you know? And then as I got a little bit older, I had girlfriends that were living a different life. Maybe they had two parents, maybe they had their own home, maybe a nicer neighborhood, something like that. But I still I didn't see the difference, which is really interesting. Or I didn't covet the different, I was just like, oh, that's nice. I have a nice house and go over and play and all of that. So it wasn't something that I was like, oh, I want something better or this is not how I want to live. I, it was challenging and scary, sure, but it wasn't something that I thought that this is not how I'm going to live my life. Now,
Hmm.
when I got a little bit older, I did go to college, and my mother never finished college. And that she was really adamant about that. And she ended up actually getting a job at the college that I attended. And that's actually where she retired from. That was her favorite job. She loved being around the college kids. And I wanted to leave college. I wanted to go move to the city and get a job and she was not going to allow that. And because she was such a strong influence, throughout my life, it was like I wasn't happy, don't get me wrong. I wasn't happy about it. I remember I took her out to breakfast and I'm thinking I'm going to sit her down and I'm going to tell her I'm leaving college and that's going to be it. And she was like, "No, that's not what's going to happen. You're going to stay in college." And of course, I wasn't happy at the time and all that, but I did that because I looked up to her and I thought, even though I was young, probably a young teenager, maybe right on about 20 something, but I knew I respected her and I knew that she knew what she was talking about. So anyways, I stayed in college and I graduated from college and I'm so grateful for that.
Yes. And what did you study? What was your pathway from college?
So I studied, I wanted to always be a therapist. And like many kids do when you enter college, I signed up, my major was going to be in social work, actually.
Mhm.
And I immersed myself in the social work department at the school. And my roommate was a business major. And I really liked my roommate and we did things together, but she was going to these different classes and I thought, I want to be with her. So I changed my major to business because of my roommate and I wanted to be
The
with her.
basis of a friendship. Oh, I love it.
So I graduated with a business degree and a minor in psychology. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that would have been handy to have that minor in psychology, actually. That'd be a great partnership.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that is about when I started to, like you asked about, get those like aspirations, those dreams. At that point, I was like, okay, for whatever reason, I thought I wanted to be in corporate. And I'm trying to think if did I have any experience? I didn't, but somehow I got insight to that, probably through college, right? And I thought I want to climb the corporate ladder. I want to, go up the ranks and lead people and manage projects and all those things. So I started to get that sort of inclination. And before I did that, I decided I was going to pack up my car and drive from the East Coast to the West Coast and live in California.
Uh-huh.
So that was a dream. You asked earlier, did I have any dreams? That was a dream for a while. And so I did that, to this day, my mother and I talk about it. I had graduated from college, so I was about 21-ish. And my mother and I talk about it to this day and say, I can't believe you let me do that. Wow. packed up my car, grabbed a friend, and off we went. And that was another great experience. And then I ended up coming back, and I had friends that worked at a company that sounded really good because they were having fun. They were young and meeting people and having fun. And I'm like, that sounds great. And so I started at the company and I was there for 27 years, climbed the corporate ladder.
Wow. And so what was that company and what was the basis of that particular business?
Yeah, so that company is a company that develops medical software.
Mm-hmm.
So the software that we have in hospitals and doctors' offices. And I had various roles. Um, my last, I'm going to say 15 years there, I was in our software development. So developing softwares, managing teams of engineers and designers and testers. And I just really, really loved it. Worked with amazing talented people. I got to travel and spent a lot of time with doctors, a lot of time getting to know them, what they like, what they didn't, all of the things you can imagine, going to dinner, going to networking events, all of that. And it was really exciting and fun. And I enjoyed it so much.
So then what made you leave? Because, and you said earlier when we had our pre-chat a conversation that, and I love the quote that nothing happens in a straight line. And that's so true. I think when we're younger, it's almost like you feel as though it's going to be a map of the road directly, leading you directly to this place and then to that place. But that's not how it is because in life we get the country roads that meander forever, or you get to a dead end, or there are road where, there's something always happening. So what made you leave your career?
So I left my career because my mother ended up having 3 strokes, and I'm her primary caregiver. I mentioned I have a brother. He lives a few thousand miles from us in South Carolina. So it's not a quick drive, is my point.
Mm.
I'm her primary caregiver, and I ended up having to take a leave from work to take care of her at the time. She's thriving now, but she was bedridden and, making her meals, all the things that you can imagine as caregivers. I'm sure a lot of women our age have been in that role. And I was on leave from my job, which means I was still employed and I was going back in maybe 3 months. And when it started getting closer to that, my daughter, I have a daughter, an only child, and she was entering her final years in high school. And I had always had that mom guilt of working. As I mentioned, I traveled, I worked long hours when she was younger. We were very fortunate. My mother took care of her from a lot of her upbringing when my husband and I were working. But I always had that mom guilt that people talk about, wasn't home with her for her first steps, maybe first words. I don't remember that. I remember I wasn't home for first steps. And I thought, now is the time to not only take care of my mom, who, as I already mentioned, I don't know if I've used the word hero yet, but she and my brother are my heroes. I wrote about them in a co-authored book called Authentic. And I thought, now is the time. My daughter's going to be going off to college in a couple years. My mom needs me. How can I make this work? And I want to be really clear about that because it was really scary.
Mm.
First of all, I was at the same role for 27 years. Quite naively, I did not know anything besides corporate. Uh, Prior to this, my mother having her strokes, I was going to be 50 in a couple years, and I'm 56 now. And I was like, what else is there out there? Just curious. I wasn't thinking about leaving my job. I was just curious. And I stumbled upon, this personal development, entrepreneurship, all these things. And it was like a whole new world opened up for me. And I said to my husband, who actually works at the same company, and I said, did you know there's all these other people out there that don't work 9 to 5? And they're called entrepreneurs. And so it was just really interesting to me. And so I thought, how can I make this work? What can I do to still bring in the income
Mm.
that we need? Believe me, it's very challenging and it's a stressful situation. And I chat with a lot of women about this, who want to leave their jobs and feel like they can't. And I understand that completely.
That is a story for so many women, because you get stuck into this career, whatever it may be, whether it's corporate, whether it's government, whether it's, working retail, whatever your job might be. Sometimes you're stuck in that groove, and you want to leave, you want to get off that train, but you're not sure how and what to do next. So what were some of those stories that were going through your head, staying versus leaving? Because there are lots when you're trying to make a decision like that. What were the main ones for you?
So I have to say some of the main ones that I mentioned already, the amazing people that I worked with, I really, I had been there for 27 years. A lot of the people that I worked with had been there similar. We've been together for a while. Sure, there's new people and people come and go, but so I had guilt or worry about leaving my teams, my coworkers, those people, that community, let's just call it that, a community.
Mm.
And then the other aspect was, are we going to be able to do this financially? Is this even possible? I'm very, very fortunate. I have a husband who's completely supportive, and he supported me throughout. And I'll tell you, because we mentioned how it's not a linear path. So I started dabbling in like creating and selling t-shirts, selling books, going on Amazon and sell, like those things that you hear about,
Yeah.
right? Can I make money doing this? And I stumbled upon Seth Godin, who I really enjoy. I'll just sum it up if people don't know. So he's a famous marketer. I'll just say it that way. And
Mhm.
he was giving a class on how to start a podcast. And so I thought, oh, that sounds great. I'll take that. I'm kind of a technical person. I'm not an engineer, but working with engineers and, technical. And so that really interested me. So I took the class and I started my own podcast. And so that was going along and, people would listen. I was like, oh my gosh, people are listening to my, right? I'm sure you can relate. And, but I didn't think like about making money doing that. And I joined groups and I just tried different things out. And one of the groups I joined was this group where we were being coached that you could really do anything you wanted. And as you're in these communities, you're helping other people, you're supporting. So the skill set that I had, I was bringing to the table. And so I was helping these small businesses with their business, even though I had never been an entrepreneur, I had business skills.
Mm.
So I thought, well, I'll be a business coach. And then I had the imposter syndrome. Who am I to be a business coach? I'm not an entrepreneur, right? And from that, one of my very first clients, I think that's true, maybe second or third, but in the beginning, had a podcast and I had my podcast, like I mentioned, and she needed help with it. And I said, well, I'll help you out. And then it just went from there. And then I developed this podcasting business, helping people start a podcast and launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts. And I have to say, and I just had a conversation this morning with a client, it's just taking that next step forward. Like the t-shirt I made, I used to know by heart. I don't remember anymore the cents, but it was like $7.31 US dollars on my t-shirts, right?
Yeah.
But you just start. And in that, I learned how to use design tools that I still use in my business today, right? And then, I thought, well, I'll sell on Amazon, affiliate links. Now I know my business, I know how to do affiliate links. So it's just that step. Keep
Yeah.
stepping forward and pulling at the string or walking in the door that's open. Who knows what you might step back and say, this is not the right room for me. And that's okay. You've learned something along the way.
Exactly. And sometimes the doors that close on you, just that's good, because it moves you into a different direction.
Mm-hmm.
And it is.
Exactly.
There's
Yeah.
no doubting that it can feel uncomfortable. The
Yeah.
unfamiliar. We love the familiar. Our brain loves the familiar. We need that sort of security, but just taking those little steps forward, one after the other, it makes such a
Yeah.
huge difference. Well done to you. Well done.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
that's
thank you. I
amazing.
definitely made a lot of mistakes along the way that I learned from for sure. I think one that I will highlight is I worked because when you first start, or many people do, not everybody, but this was me, you have that imposter syndrome, right? And
Mm.
I thought, oh, should I really be doing this? And so somebody hired me and said, I'll pay you later. And I thought, well, that's fine. And I worked for, I'm going to say 3 months for no pay. And then they walked and left.
Is that right?
And so that was a really good lesson for me.
Yeah.
I learned a lot along the way.
Mm.
So much I learned, and that not even a lesson in that, but just in semantics and tactics and business strategy. So it was beneficial and it was very valuable,
Mm.
not money wise, if you will, but such a valuable lesson. And so I
Yeah.
appreciate that,
Yeah.
to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah. And then what was your life, if you could just describe your life before you left corporate and then your life after? Like, how did that start to feel for you? Obviously, in the early stages, it would have been a bit uncomfortable, but what was life like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think I'll start with making sacrifices in a very positive way.
Mhm.
Okay, so I know sacrifices has that connotation, but I'll say it this way, making intentional choices, things I didn't need that say cost money, I omitted. I'm going to give you a really solid example that I love to give, and it might resonate with folks, it might not, but I decided that I was no longer going to have my own car. I did not want car payments. I couldn't afford to buy a car outright. My car was on its last legs and I donated it to a charity. And I thought this is a intentional choice because it's more important for me to be able to leave my job, to be home with my daughter, to be a caregiver for my mom and start my own business, and then to have a car in the driveway. My mom has a car, my husband, so it's not like we have a family here that has there are vehicles that I can use.
Mm. Yeah.
So, but I chose I'm not going to have my own vehicle. And to this day, I still don't have my own car. So it was making those choices, those, hard choices of what is more important, right? And really kind of sitting with it. I journaled a lot in the beginning. I still journal.
Mm.
I journaled a lot. One of the best resources, books I ever read was The Artist's Way.
Oh,
I
Julie
want to say
Cameron.
by, yes,
Yeah.
yes. And I followed it to the T, took myself on artist dates. So what that beginning stage looked like was floundering, was, okay, what do I do now? Okay, I got to cut back. So I mentioned that. I not sure really what I'm doing, a lot of imposter syndrome, just taking that next step forward, whatever that might be. Going to lunch with friends during the day when I would be at work. How
Yeah.
lovely,
Mm.
right? So also embracing the freedom and kind of finding my footing. And one of the best things I will say about that time, I'm not in that period now, but when I first left corporate, made the leap, it was scary. But then now I'm talking about have left, officially left. I've made some intentional choices. And now what am I doing with my time? And what are the right next steps? I didn't know, you know? So I experimented. I read that book. I took classes. I hired coaches. I just really invested in myself
Yeah.
and kind of floundered around and figured it out. And when I was out to lunch with a friend or to breakfast, when I normally would be at work, and I still do this today, I take a moment right then and there and be like, I would be at my job right now. Like this is by choice,
Yeah.
and I am so grateful for this. And back then I would come home, take care of my mom because she was still really early on in her recovery. So that kept me really busy. But now fast forward to today in time, I think it was yesterday, I went to the movies. I have a dear friend who was battling cancer, has young children, and she wanted to get together. And I have a lot of work now for clients that I work for, but I can decide when I do that work.
Mm.
And I said, yeah, let's do it. Took the kids to the movie in the middle of the day, took 4 hours out of my day. And I was working last night by choice.
Yep.
Right. I didn't come home and be like, well, now I gotta edit podcast. I was so happy to have had that time with her and be able to come home and do something that I love on my own time. Nobody's checking in on me. Nobody's saying, well, where are you? Come back to work. It's really freeing.
It is really freeing, and I'm nodding my head to so much of what you're saying, because I get it, because it mirrors what I did quite a lot. And I think as women, and not, well, I'm speaking on behalf of most women and not men, because they might have a different story. But I know for many of us, we are the caregivers. We do have lots of different responsibilities, and we get to a point where we know what we don't want anymore. We've had enough, and like we're tired of that. But and we can very clearly articulate, you know, what we don't want. But it's finding that time to actually sit down with yourself and ask, well, what do you want? And I think that's something that so many of us don't ever ask ourselves, or ask ourselves enough. And then when you
Yes.
find out, take those steps. It may not be as drastic as leaving your job, but what can you do? What are those small steps? I mean, it's going to look different for everyone. And
Yeah.
it's so important that I think we at least start to recognize that we do have probably many unfulfilled dreams. We don't allow ourselves that process of dreaming and thinking about what life could possibly be looking like. And that's where, the artist way is such, or journaling, in fact, is such a great way to, as an outlet, to start to unravel those ideas and thoughts on what you might possibly want, and then start taking those brave actions, one little step after another. What can you do in bite-sized bits? If you're not brave enough to do a big step, well, what are those little things that you can do?
And I really want to highlight that because I think that is so important that I want people to understand. It's not about for me, leaving corporate. Like I didn't just wake up one day and my mom had a stroke and I'm like, okay, I'm leaving corporate. I had been taking steps all along the way,
Mm.
unwittingly, but nonetheless, they were these steps. And they're very so little. And I want to give this example. So one of as I mentioned, when I was about 48, I, discovered personal development and entrepreneurship and all this wonderful stuff out there. And I hired a coach. And I remember this meant so much to me. She said, just go to your closet and whatever calls to you to put on, put it on. It could be purple pants and a yellow shirt. It doesn't matter. It's just like what speaks to you. Like that is a step.
Mm.
That is to connecting with yourself, right? And the other thing I want to highlight is back to your question about how did I feel in the beginning when I first left corporate. Another really important aspect for me was I started being very aware of my intuition. And it reminded me of when I was a child. I was super intuitive as a child. And I remember thinking maybe I'm clairvoyant, a little kid. I'm like, oh, maybe I can see the future when I was a child. And because when you push away all the noise and you just kind of are with yourself, things come up, whatever that is. For me, it was, this sort of intuition feeling, or I can't really describe it because for everybody it's different, but just being in tune with your own inner voice. And the other thing is really leaning into that. The other example is paying attention to listening to that voice that's telling you something. And I'm going to give another really simple, easy, almost silly example because I want to hit home for people. This isn't like rocket science. It's not like somebody's got the key. Nobody has the key. You just take steps. And so the thing was, speaking of keys, I'll use that as an example. You lose your keys. We all lose our keys, right? And you start searching for them. But in your mind, you're like, you're being pulled to search somewhere and you're like, no, they won't be there. I'm just going to keep looking where I normally look, and you don't find them. go to that place that you're being pulled to look for the keys. And I'm not saying they're going to be there. That's not the point. They might be, but that's not the point. How many times have I gone to that place, listened, said, okay, it's wanting me to check the refrigerator, whatever, and gone there and they're not there. It's not about finding the keys there. It's not about like, oh, I'm, having this sign that I know where the keys are. It's about just following that trail of your intuition, believing in yourself, trusting in yourself to follow that voice, that inner voice. And I
Mm.
think that's so important.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally, and that's something that I've learned to do, and it's got me to where I am now. Where it's going to take me to, who knows? And I think that's the exciting part, that we don't have to have all the answers right now. Just go in that general
Exactly.
direction and you'll end up where you're meant to be. If you're
Exactly.
willing to take the chance. And if you're not willing to take the chance, then, blaming, complaining, and making excuses is not going to be helpful for you. It's,
No.
yeah, that's the tough
Yeah.
love part of things, I suppose, isn't it? Now,
Yeah.
also, Christine, we're living in different parts of the world, but there's a commonality. No matter where women live, there's some really big life transitions that happen. Life will continue going on, and at this stage of life, they seem to happen with fairly quickly. You've been in the thick of caring for your daughter and caring for your mum, so you've gone through that. What were some of the challenges that you had when you were primary caregiver for both, and we'll talk about your daughter shortly, but when your daughter was at home and mum was really unwell, what were some of those challenges for you? Because it was your responsibility to look after both.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think some of the challenges were to make intentional choices. So, for example, um, in the evening where I would normally want to be spending time with my daughter, I would have to be with my mom lives with us and she lives downstairs. When I say downstairs, being downstairs with my mother, whether making sure she has her meds, she's fed, and, knowing that that's the priority right now. And the goal is to get her healthy, right? And dealing with that challenge of feeling like I'm missing out time with my daughter, or then vice versa. My mom really took priority at that really critical stage. But then let's say she's past that and I'm balancing still both my daughter and my mom, and my mom says not as critical. Um, spending time with my daughter and then thinking, is my mom lonely downstairs? Should I be downstairs? And my daughter and my mother have a beautiful relationship, so we would all get together downstairs at my mom's. And but it's definitely that push and pull. It's definitely, I don't have an answer for it. I think it's a feeling, and you make your choice, right or wrong, and you live with it, And if you feel like you've made the wrong choice one day, or you need a little bit more balance on the other side, then you focus that the next day. But yeah, it's a lot. It's definitely a lot of responsibility and can sort of drain your energy sources.
Mm, yeah, yeah. And it's important. What did you do to try to give yourself more energy? Did you have an outlet during those more difficult times that you felt was really helpful for you?
So I think everybody is different.
Yeah.
My outlet was having the unbelievable opportunity to take a nap.
Yeah.
That had never happened in my life before. And I think it was almost out of necessity, or my body was just shutting down. And I'm like, I can't fight this. I need to take a nap.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the opportunity to take a nap, you know? And you can tell by my response, I still feel guilty about that.
Yeah.
Taking a nap when you're taking care of people, you don't take a nap.
Yeah.
But
Almost a
yeah,
sign of
that
weakness.
was
It
about it.
really isn't. It's a sign of strength to listen to your body and to give it what it,
Yeah.
so you can show up then for whoever needs it. And so your daughter has recently left home. So you're dealing now with, the empty nest, even though mum's still living at home, caring for you downstairs. But that whole separation of your daughter is now away from you. How are you going with that big transition?
It's really hard. And I'll say, I keep saying this, but everybody's different.
Yeah.
For me is extremely hard. I miss her
Mm.
so much. And I want to be really clear. I'm so happy for her, and this is where she wants to be. And if she had said, I'm not going to college, I'm going to go to a trade school, and we're happy whatever she decided. You know, this is where she's meant to be, and she's happy, and I'm happy for her. I want her to be an independent person. I was very independent. She is very independent. So it's all good.
Mhm.
That doesn't negate the fact of how much I miss her.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I think
hard.
I think lots of mums who have got children who have recently left home or have got adult children way relate totally with what you've just said then, me included. So, Christine, you've
Mm.
gone through a career transition, starting a new business, becoming the carer for your mum, having your daughter leave home. Have you had a support network over these last few years? And if you have, what does that look like for you?
Yeah. So I think that my support network, I'm very fortunate. My husband and I have a wonderful relationship. Like I said, he supports me. One of my things, my non-negotiable, if you will, for many, 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 many years, is to have a happy home. So we have a happy, if you will, lifestyle. There's no yelling in our home. There's no slamming door, and that's by choice, you
Mm.
know. Everybody needs something different for whatever reason. That didn't feel good to me to have that type of thing in my home. So we've made that intentional choice. My husband really balances me out. He's very humorous, which I love. So that's been a great support. And girlfriends. I will say I have amazing friends that, we're not always together. We might not see each other that often. I wish probably we saw each other more, but when I need a reprieve, maybe traveling 4 hours in the car to go stay at a girlfriend's house and just hang out and just be together. Even texting. I have a wonderful girlfriend who's been texting me lately because I don't even remember now. Something came up in my life. I don't even remember. See how things are. She kept checking in every day. I'm like, I think I know what it was. It was my daughter had been home for the holidays, and then she went back to school, and I was feeling sad again.
Yeah.
So how are you feeling? So sweet. And
Mm.
so and I think that is so important too. Another thing that I feel very passionate about is your friendships. I think as we get older, friendships, community is so important. It doesn't need to be this big, elaborate community. You don't need to go out and go on cruises and whatever speaks to you, but having people that you can reach out to when you need, and you're also there to support them, because supporting others gives us great purpose and good feeling as well, right? So having, that community, big, small, whatever it is, I think is very important, and I have that. So I'm very fortunate.
Well, that is fortunate because some people don't have what you've got. So, and again, you're aware of that. It's going to look different for different people. And so, if that's not what you have, find something that's going to give you what you've just described there.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
And I think, doing things that you get are uncomfortable. So I'm trying to think of an example, like I'm going to say a networking thing, but that might not apply for everyone. But, going to something, a dance class or something that seems really like kind of out of the ordinary. Like, why would I go to a dance club or horseback riding or something that speaks to you, because you're going to meet people
Hmm.
when you do that. Get out of your normal day to day and do something that maybe you did as a child and you want to try it again. Maybe you were a swimmer and go to the local pool and,
Yeah.
a swim class or something.
And that's one of the things when I'm mentoring women as well. We go through what brought you joy. What did you used to do that you haven't done for a long time? And you might have to go back to when you were a child. And it might be hard to think about those things, but often they won't they won't change. What you enjoyed when you were younger may well be what you enjoy right now if you gave it a go. Like you said, try whatever you did, or even joining community groups. That's another great way. Volunteering, there's so much in giving, and you sort of touched on that before, giving to others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And that's another thing I just want to expand on that as well, because it's such a great point, Joe, that you made. I help a couple of elderly folks with some assistance they need. But additionally, besides that, like I mentioned, it's winter here and it's bitter cold and we're all in the house. And so I reached out to one of the lovely ladies and I said, you know what? I said, what? And she lives alone. And I said, why don't we go and get a treat? Let's go tomorrow, get a coffee, get a treat, my treat, let's just get out in public. Like I go to her home and visit with her, which is great, but also just getting out in public. You don't have to even just sitting in a coffee shop with buzzing of,
Yeah.
people around you
Mm.
feels good.
Yeah, it does. It absolutely does. So, Christine, what's next in the pipeline for you? Business life, personal life? What are you looking at for the next, 12 months, 2 to 3 years? What's it going to look like?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. So I am looking at growing my business, my podcast production business.
Yep.
I love it so much and I'm really immersed in it and I love learning.
Mm.
So I think a general answer to that question would be to continue learning. Yes, it'll be a lot of podcasting, but other things as well,
Yeah.
other interests. Reading, I think that's another thing as a busy person. I'm hoping other people can relate and I'm not alone in this. I never really embraced reading. Felt I was too busy. I didn't really read a lot as a child either to paint a true picture. So it wasn't like I read as a child and then I got busy and I couldn't read. But being so busy and having that guilt about sitting down and reading a book and not being of service or doing cleaning or something, right? So I look forward to reading more, learning, growing my business, and serving others. I am a natural caregiver. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but I like to support others. So more of that. Give me more of that.
Lovely. And we also know that this stage in life, working on what you just talked about, then prioritizing health and wellness is so important to look after ourselves now so that our future is going to look a lot brighter. What does this look like for you when you're managing, the things that you're doing now?
Yeah, that's a really, really great question. And that is so important. And especially working with elderly, I see that a lot. And honestly, like a lot of my clients are health and wellness in that area. So for me, I try to prioritize exercise every day. Do those things are important to me. So moving my body, eating healthy. My husband, I'm very fortunate, does all the cooking. So I don't do any cooking.
Yeah.
He does all the grocery shopping. And so we eat really well, meaning not processed foods. We don't go out to eat a lot, meditating, journaling, taking time, I'm going to bring my mom to the spa, like taking time for yourself, making time for what's important for you
Mm.
in staying healthy. That's another great thing about my business. I listen to so many podcasts and I learned so much from them. So, our mutual friend, she's in the health and wellness space, and I've learned so much from her and eating healthy and taking care of our mind, body, and spirit because I want to be here for a long time. And I want to do the best I can to take good care of myself and my family.
Yeah, yeah. And so thinking about that, then you sort of touched on what's next in the pipeline for you. What are you really enjoying about right now for you, this stage of life?
That's a great question, Joe, and I'm laughing at my answer. My answer is, and I'm sorry to say it, but I really enjoy podcasting.
Yeah.
Like, I enjoy what I do so much that I don't want to go to bed at night. And when I wake up in the morning, I cannot wait to start working. And I'm like, no, you have to get in your jog. You have to get in your journal. It's like, just right now. Will that be always? Of course not. But I'm enjoying the season and I'm enjoying growing the business. I'm enjoying what I do so much. And I feel very fortunate.
That's fabulous that you found something that you're really enjoying. And do you think it's because you've got more of a creative outlet in doing that? You may have been in I know for me, I was in a job that used to be creative. And then slowly the creativity was eked out of the profession to the point where I lost that sense of creating and doing and writing and making it interesting. Do you think that might be what you've experienced as well from a corporate job that was so structured? You know, we do things a certain way to now all of a sudden it's choose your own adventure, like a where's Wally, where's he off to today? And, you know, do you think that might be for you?
I do think that is for sure. I can remember when I was a child, one of my favorite things I used to play with one of my best friends was we were, I didn't know it at the time, but business owners, and we'd have a store and the little cash register, right? And you make your own adventure, like you're saying, right? And that's basically what I'm doing. I have my own podcast, so I get to be creative. I get to interview wonderful people. I get to do something I really like. So I'm being creative every day. I create social media. There's a lot of that. I think you hit the nail on the head. And I will add, I think probably for me, it's that helping others, that again, that support role. Like I love helping other people. And so somebody comes to me, like the call this morning, she was having a little roadblock on her podcast and what was next. And we just sat down and just had a conversation. And, I pulled out some strings, when you brainstorm with somebody, like you're in your own head. What's that saying? You're inside the jar, so you can't see the label.
Yeah.
And just really kind of helping her do that, helping my podcast clients with, they record, I get it out into the world for them so they don't have to worry about it. They can do something else. So I think it's all of that for me that makes it really enjoyable.
Fantastic. Well, every time you talk about it, you light up, so it's doing something for you. And finally, Christine, what do you hope that 80-year-old Christine is going to say about current day Christine?
That she made it happen, that she chose the life that she wanted and did it, made it happen. I think that a lot of people hesitate, and I get it. I totally understand that. I am so glad that I decided to jump in. I didn't do it alone. I mentioned the support of my husband. I also had coaches. I don't think this is a solo journey by any means. I'm not here because of Christine. I'm here because of so many other people. And I think that having the childhood that I had, I think I want 80-year-old Christine to be resting, maybe taking more naps, and just be proud, saying, you did it.
Yep. Lovely. It's a great way to end this episode. So thank you so much for coming on, sharing your story, being open and honest about all things that has happened in your life, and also for sharing what your experiences are, in the hope that another woman is going to hear that and take something from this. And that's what I would love every woman with every episode is, what can you take from today's conversation, and just take that one step for yourself. What could you do? So thank you, Christine.
Thank you so much, Jo. This has been a pleasure.
It has. All right. All the best. Thank you. Thanks so much for spending your time with me today. I hope you feel inspired to make the next chapter of your life the best one yet. And remember to share this episode with someone else who would love it, and connect with me on Instagram or LinkedIn at Jo Clark Coaching. All the links and the details from today's episode are in the show notes or at joclarkcoaching.com. And if you enjoyed this episode, please follow or subscribe this show on your favorite podcast app and leave a 5-star rating and review. This helps more midlife women find these empowering conversations. I can't wait to chat with you next week. Until then, take care and keep creating a life that you love.